vampira to modern day horror films, it is horror media that has shaped not only my drag, but who I am as a person. Good evening and welcome to Venom's Vault, the podcast where my special interests of drag and horror collide. I am your hostess, Venom, the plus-size vampire MILF of South Texas. Tonight we are going to unlock the coffin lid and dig up some of my secrets as to who I am, what inspires me, and some of my favorite horror films. So don't go anywhere, leave the wooden stakes at home, and grab your glasses of wine because things are about to get deliciously dark. Good evening, everybody. My name is Venom, and you are now streaming or watching the first ever episode of Venom's Vault, which is my new podcast where I talk about drag, horror, and all of my niche interests. So just to get into a little bit about me, my name is Venom. I was originally born and raised in Corpus Christi, Texas, where I grew up in a low-income household, and I didn't always have access to cable. But what I did always have access to was a DVD player. And on that DVD player, I remember playing so many classic and campy horror films. A few notable ones are 2004's Seed of Chucky, as well as the classic 1990s hit, The Craft, starring Fairuza Balk, Robin Tooney, Rachel True, and Neve Campbell. You'll start to notice that I'm kind of a film freak at this point, so I kind of remember these things off the top of my head. But just to get a little bit into it, I love Jennifer Tilly. I love the meta-ness of Seed of Chucky as well, the way that it's literally Jennifer Tilly playing Tiffany Ray Valentine while also playing Jennifer Tilly as an actress in this universe is just so interesting. One of my favorite quotes is whenever Jennifer Tilly is playing Tiffany and there's Tiffany the doll standing there and she watches Jennifer Tilly go by and she goes, "Jennifer Tilly, she sounds just like an angel." And it's so funny because it's literally played by the same person. There is a great cameo by famous LGBTQ director John Waters, famous for Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, Divine. I really love Divine as a character too. She is so filthy and gross, but also just so punk and powerful. And I feel like that is a big aspect of what inspires my drag. And speaking of which, the original 1950s glamour ghoul, Mina Nurmi, aka Vampira, is one of my greatest drag inspirations. Whenever I describe my drag as a vampire MILF, I mean that quite literally. I chose being a vampire as the character because I love like the gothic fashion. They've lived through every single century and decade and they looked great in all of them too. And that's what I really wanted for Venom. I wanted to be this immortal being, this essence of vampiric gothic glamour with a little bit of a horror twist. And then I chose MILF because that is the campy side of who I am. MILFs are just so silly, klutzy, clumsy, and they're always drinking wine. And I thought that being a vampire MILF, I could always be drinking blood and not get judged for it because red wine is a similar color, if you know what I mean. I also have a K-cup breastplate and 4-inch hip pads, and I'm definitely not afraid to use them. So that's what really springboarded my drag, and whenever I'm in character as I am before you right now, I have this sort of theatrical and dramatic tone to my voice. And a lot of that comes from the fact that whenever I was in junior high and high school, I did theater for pretty much the entire duration of my schooling experience. And being the only person in my school that is quite like me, we had other gay people in my school. One of them is actually one of my best friends to this day. So getting back into it, another film that really inspired me growing up was 1996's The Craft, directed by Andrew Fleming. So The Craft is such a classic, and I'm really happy that it's gotten popular recently. You see on TikTok that there's sounds of Fairuza Balk's character Nancy doing like, "Oh, he's sorry, sorry, sorry." That's like one of the best quotes in the movie, and I always see it burned into my memory. You can see the triangle gothic shoes of Nancy like scurrying across the floor to Chris, about to throw him out of the window telekinetically. And it's just so amazing. Fairuza Balk is such an amazing actor. And I really relate to the character of Nancy because each character, each witch in that film has their own sort of story. Whenever I explain The Craft to somebody new, I always kind of explain it as Mean Girls, but with witchcraft. And so Nancy is to be considered the most powerful of the group, the Regina George, if you will. Nancy is from a low income household, which I definitely relate to. She lives in a trailer with her mother and abusive stepfather, and she's just tired of the life that she's living. She hates going home to a trailer. She hates living with an abusive stepfather. And so one day she uses her witchcraft to give him a heart attack. And then her and her mother both share a big life insurance policy fortune, and they move to a penthouse. And then there's so many subtle shifts throughout the film with each of the four main characters. But with Nancy specifically, hers happens in her clothing. In the beginning of the film, she's wearing this really shiny PVC faux leather coat. And then after she gets this life insurance fortune, she goes in and has a genuine leather coat. Same shape, same structure, but a different and more unaffordable material, if you will. And that was a really slight nod to the fact that her socioeconomic status has changed and that she's still the same Nancy, but not only does she have witchcraft going to her head, she also has money going to her head. She's insecure about her status in life, and growing up in a similar situation, I definitely relate to that. And now whenever I do drag, put together looks and style hair, I'm a very resourceful queen, if you haven't noticed. This hair that I'm wearing is styled by yours truly. Every single rhinestone on all of my costumes is hand placed by yours truly. And I take pride in being a resourceful drag artist and being able to make something out of nothing. Because growing up, it's not that I really had nothing. I always had everything that I needed and I never went without. But whenever I have expensive hobbies such as doing drag, and then whenever I was in theater, I would have to source things for my own costume because my school didn't really have a budget for theater. And all of those hardships that I experienced growing up just made me into the resourceful person that I am today. Now, although I did not have this film on DVD growing up, Jennifer's Body 2009, directed by Karen Kusama and written by Diablo Cody, is definitely another pivotal film in my life. I love Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried's chemistry as Jennifer Check and Anita Needy Lesnicki, respectively. The film is such a time capsule of 2009, and although I was literally a toddler in 2009, I really loved the film watching it later because it totally gave 2009 vibes with the supernatural twist of Jennifer Check being a man-eating succubus diva, if you will. And so watching that film, there are definitely hints of lesbianism. There is definitely parts where you can definitely tell that it was marketed towards men for this time. The trailers of the film are overtly sexual. They pander towards the male gaze. But whenever you actually watch it, it is a film about broken friendships and people who take advantage of each other. And honestly, pretty much a metaphor for how females always crave male validation, but Jennifer sort of reclaims that power by feasting on the men that she once needed validation from. She quite literally eats boys, and there's nothing more feminist and kick-ass than that. And there are various other films that also inspire not only my drag, but my daily life, such as Carrie 1976. I absolutely love Bride of Chucky 1998, which came before Seed of Chucky. I just didn't really grow up watching it. And oh my goodness, there are just so many films that I really love. And being a theatrical drag queen, I always make sure to make a entertaining mix that has that sort of horror flair to it. And I love being a kind of immortal being because it allows me to do drag from various types of decades. I did an 80s mix 1 minute, and then I did a 90s witch mix the next. And that's really what makes my drag so unique, is that I'm able to shape shift through different decades and centuries while still maintaining this sort of immortal gothic beauty. And I'm able to create something hauntingly beautiful. Speaking of hauntingly beautiful, the films that I watched growing up, as well as staples in horror media such as Vampira and Jennifer Tilly, not only for her roles in the Chucky series as Tiffany Valentine / Tiffany Ray. I also love Jennifer Tilly because she's just a badass person. She was a star poker player. She was in other films such as Bound, where she played a lesbian, and I just really enjoy Jennifer Tilly as an essence, as a being, as a character, because She has created a career for herself that spans over decades, and that is what I want to accomplish with my drag, building an audience and garnering engagement that lasts not only through the next few years, but the next few decades. At the end of the day, the films that I grew up watching have not only inspired the drag persona that you see before you today, but they've also inspired my life. Whether it's Vampira from 1950s or modern day horror films like Jennifer's Body or Seed of Chucky, I am greatly inspired by these campy, kitschy, vampiric, and horrific media content outlets. I'm having so much fun recording this podcast, and I really wanted to start it because I feel like the trend of people just go ahead and starting their podcast is hopefully coming to a halt. I really started this to talk about things that have interested me, and I've actually been planning it for a while, and nothing ever happens unless you hit record, so here I am. Well, my darlings, that is all for now. Thank you so much for listening and or streaming the very first episode of Venom's Vault, the podcast where all of my drag, horror, and other niche interests come to a head and collide. I hope to see you all in the vault for next episode where I tackle the concept of witches, witchcraft, and bitches, and some of my favorite horror films where I delve a little bit more deeply into the craft and add on other films such as Carrie 1976 and the Annabelle classic The Love Witch 2016 starring Samantha Robinson. Make sure to follow me on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram wherever you see fit. My username on every single platform is venom.reanimated. Thank you so much for watching, streaming, or listening wherever you get your podcasts, and please join me next time in the vault. Bye.